Okay, good morning. Welcome to Eggs and Issues. I think this is the last one for this session, I believe. If not, we'll have another one next month.
I think this is the last one.
Okay. But thank you for coming this morning. Today's meal is being sponsored, our breakfast is sponsored by Seaboard Foods. So we thank Seaboard for buying our breakfast this morning. We have Casey Murdoch, representative for this district, with us today, but there are some people here I want to introduce. First, Carolyn Steger. It is so good to see you this morning. She's the executive director of the Oklahoma Municipal League, and welcome to Guyman.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Casey, I think you're it.
All right, thank you. How are y'all today? Well, we got done Friday at 5 o'clock. I think the speaker wanted to give his going away speech, and he kept us there till 5 o'clock saying goodbyes. But for most of those guys, that was okay. But by the time I got back to my apartment and packed up, I didn't get home till 2 o'clock in the morning. So I would much rather get on and get out of there than sit around visiting. But we're terming out 30, they're either terming out or not running again, 30 members on the House side. So there's a lot of goodbyes, and that was the last time they was going to be there. So I'm sure they were wanting to soak it all up before they left. But this session we started, well, at our caucus retreat is when we got news, or when we were advised that we had a $1.3 billion hole in our budget. And if that's not good enough news, we also was advised that we were going into budget fail. Talk about feeling like somebody come up and kicked you right in the gut. It was ugly. It was ugly. We handled the budget fail as well as we possibly could. So when the budget goes into fail, there's automatic cuts across the board. That's constitutional. It cuts. But in March, I believe, we went back in and pulled money out of the rainy day fund to get to schools and DOC. We gave $51 million to education, and I think about $28 million to DOC that we pulled out of the rainy day fund to cover the budget cuts, or the budget fail, and the cuts that these two agencies were receiving. So, show up February 1st, session starting. You walk into that Capitol building. That Capitol building is alive, and it reflects and lives the attitudes of the people inside. And the first day you could feel the tension, you could feel the dread. It was almost like walking in a morgue. I mean, and this was my first year, so I don't have any previous years to draw from, but the people I talked to said this is the worst they've ever seen it. But with that being said, I was actually nervous for our district because it seems like everything we have out here is just hanging on by a fingernail. So walking in February 1st, I knew we couldn't take any cuts out here. That would shut down schools, that would shut down hospitals, and I was almost sick to my stomach. I mean, that's how nervous I was. I didn't sleep. This session, I didn't sleep much at all. Just worrying about this. I'll get into it a little in more detail. Bryce, I talked to him last night. He is coming, and so we wouldn't hit the same numbers and talk about the same stuff. He said he was going to hit the numbers on the budget, and I'm going to talk more policy. So if for some reason he doesn't show up, I'll come back to the numbers on the budget. But I'll leave that up to him. I'd hate to take all his fanfare before he gets here. But anyway, Friday, 5 o'clock, we finished. The budget is not perfect. Actually, it's not even close. It's ugly. But for District 61, I feel like it's what I was looking at February 1st. I feel like it's a big win for District 61. We were able to keep common education held flat at 2016 levels or 15 levels. And with that being said, last year we had a $611 million hole in the budget, and we kept common education flat with no cuts. But we were able to do it again this year with a $1.3 billion hole in the budget, which I thought that was a miracle in itself. The Healthcare Authority, I don't know, some of you guys, I don't know when you started getting emails. I know it hit on a Friday, because when I went home on weekends, I don't look at my phone, I just kind of shut down. And also that's a good thing about living in Felt. You don't hear a lot. It's kind of out there. So Sunday, my email was blowing up about the 25% cuts to hospitals from the Healthcare Authority. When I walked in the Capitol, I went straight to the A&B chairman's office, Earl Sears, Chairman Sears, and I told him, I said, we can't do a 25% cut. Not only will it shut down every hospital in my district, it will shut down every rural hospital in the state of Oklahoma. They cannot take those kind of cuts. I mean, we lost a hospital in Sayre. Frederick's close. I think they went to critical care. We could not give our hospitals a 25% cut. We could not do that. And he assured me that the cuts wouldn't be anywhere near 25%. At that point in the budget process, we were looking at 5 to 6% cuts for them. For me, that was still ugly for us. I mean, because we're struggling. We're struggling out here. Friday, the Healthcare Authority is in the black. I visited with Bryce last night. His numbers are different than mine. I don't know why. What I saw looked like a 9% increase to the Healthcare Authority. He said his numbers didn't say that, but he was going to double check last night when he got to the room. He's actually in town, so I know he's going to be here. But anyway, with any case, we went from a 25% cut mid-session to the Healthcare Authority to actually giving them money this year. Our transportation, our 8-year plan, ODOT's 8-year plan, we bonded $200 million to fund road and bridge projects, actual physical projects. We can do that. That's constitutional. That kept the road and bridge projects rolling. It also is one of the major reasons we were able to keep Common Ed flat and give money to the Healthcare Authority and to keep the DOC flat. I know that was what I was pushing, was to bond ODOT because I wanted to protect common education and our hospitals. That was my priorities, and in a budget year like this year, that was the only way I saw we were going to be able to do this. I got a lot of, and I pushed it hard at the Capitol, and I got a lot of pushback. They did not think we needed to go into debt, and how I explained it to them, I mean, this is, and all the stories I'd been hearing, this is the worst year ever, and all of you know I run cows. 2011 was my worst year ever. We didn't get a rain. I mean, at that time, the last rain I remembered was back in Noah's time, and we got 1/10 of an inch then. But we were bad. We were bad off. I had to go to the bank. I had to borrow extra money to buy hay. I had to borrow extra money to find pasture. I had to haul my cows 500 miles away to find grass for them. I don't like going into debt any worse than anybody else, but in everybody's lifetime, they come to that point that they've got to go to the bank and they've got to get some money to get through the rough times. We never imagined oil being at $27 a barrel, or at a low of $27 a barrel. That's the reason we went into budget fail the first of the year, because when we budgeted last year, we set our budget at $47 a barrel oil. Now, you know, we all know oil is the main driver of Oklahoma's economy and the state economy. I mean, our economy. That's where we get most of our tax revenue, is from oil and gas. And when it hit $27 a barrel, that blew our budget up from last year, because we budgeted at 47. So we had to fix that. But anyway, I don't like bonding. I don't like going to the bank and borrow money, but I felt we needed to protect common education, because I know schools out here could not take any kind of cut. When the budget fail started happening, I started calling superintendents, and the first one I called is the Felt superintendent, because, you know, I was on the school board at Felt, so her and I are real close. And I asked her, how are you doing? You know, you're fixing to get some cuts. And she told me we can take them for a little bit and then we're done. And every school across, I know Keys is worse off than Felt is. And when I was on the board, Felt was in pretty good shape financially. That was 2 years ago. So that worried me. So my main focus was to protect our schools out here, and through bonding of ODOT, we did. We kept them flat. The hospital's the same case. I was on the phone all session long. Shattuck Hospital was on the verge of closing. About every week I got a phone call, and they were trying to it's a municipal hospital. They were trying to get money from the county. Well, since it wasn't a county hospital, that was a fight, trying to get the county to be able to give them money to make payroll. And the last week of session, second to the 2 weeks left in session, along in that time frame, I heard it may not last a week. Now, it's still going, but they're hanging on by their fingernails. I mean, it is not pretty out here. And that's, you know, a long drawn out explanation of where we started in February and the budget that we actually signed. I feel like District 61 came out as well as we possibly could in this kind of budget year. I'm going to move on into some policies that we did, and hopefully Bryce will come back and give you the numbers on the budget. But House Bill 3218, we reduced testing in schools. We're going to go to one standardized test. Well, I say that. The state is, and then they'll have to test whatever is required by the feds. But that should save us somewhere around $12 million a year is what we were spending on on testing. I think that was a big win. I know when I was on the school board, it was, I mean, I said we might, as soon as this testing's done, we might as well let school out, because the teachers the kids were done. Once the test was done, they were done. And right after the first of the year, this year, my son, I said, well, I kind of had to stick my boot up his butt, because when basketball season was over, he was done trying in school. You know, he was done. And I kind of had to give him a little incentive to do better, and he wasn't doing too good. And I said, you got to bring these grades up. And he goes, all we're doing is preparing for these tests. I can't get my grades up. I said, well, you better go ask for some extra credit or something. But, and that was along middle of February. They start, and I think actually it's the second semester, the entire second semester, they just start preparing for these state tests. With this bill, that's going to ease the pressure on that. That was a tremendous bill. Another bill was the teacher evaluations. When I ran, one of my things I wanted to do was give more control back to the school boards. So part of the teacher evaluation was they were evaluated off of how the kids scored on these state tests. Well, how many teachers do we have in here? Is that it? Glad you showed up. So some kids don't test well. They get nervous, they don't test well, and that is not a good sign to judge a teacher off of how kids do on a test. And I truly believe that the superintendents and the principals that see those teachers in action should be the ones to evaluate how good a teacher they are, because they know what's going on in the classroom. They know what's basically on the front line. They know what that individual teacher is dealing with in that classroom, what kind of kids they have. Well, I don't have a bill number, or I'd give it to you. Anyway, we did that away. Now, if a school board wants to use state testing on how the kids do as far as using it in their process of evaluation, they still can, but it's not mandated that that portion of the teacher's evaluation is off of the state testing. The work centers, Beaver is probably, I'm still working on it, but probably going to lose their work detention center. The state decided to shut down every work detention center in the state and move them all to Granite. Thank you. That was tough. Beaver uses those work release guys a lot. Forgan uses them. They go out to the dunes and work. That's going to be tough on that community. I did irritate the Speaker of the House a little bit, because we got together and had a meeting, the representatives that had these work detention centers in their district, and I thought it was a closed meeting. I didn't realize the Tulsa World was there and the Daily Oklahoman, and I made some comments that kind of upset the Speaker, but I wasn't too happy about closing the work detention centers. And I said, you know, maybe we need to put some pressure on them, because the way they did it was not straight up. They put the vote of the work detention centers on their agenda 25 hours before they did it. So I felt like they kind of snuck it in the last minute and did not give us time to lobby to try to save them. And I made the comment in that meeting that maybe we ought to just hold the budget up until we kind of have a little sit down and try to work this out. And the Speaker was not real happy when that hit the papers. I kind of got a long text message, that a pretty good tongue lashing on what I needed to say to the papers and what I didn't need to say. But anyway, still working on that. I think I went to the Speaker and visited with him, and I'm going to try to get a sit down with DOC, and they may be willing, if the community will flip some of the bill of those work detention centers, of leaving them open. So I don't really want to say it's a done deal yet for Beaver. We're still working on it, but it doesn't look good at this point. Another bill that got a lot of play, it died, but I wanted to mention it, was the open carry bill. It made it to the Senate and it did not get out of conference, but that got a lot of play in the news. But we did not pass the open carry gun bill. The author did not get it signed out of conference over on the Senate, so we don't have to worry about that one. The mayor and Mike Shannon and actually municipalities ought to like this one. The internet sales tax, that passed. That will, I don't want to say it'd be a savior for Guyman, but it will help Guyman. It will help all of these small municipalities. We will be able to collect sales tax off of sales from the internet. being from out here all my life, I buy things off the internet as much as I possibly can, mainly because I hate to go shopping. And it's a long ways to go shopping, and I like the convenience of just being able to buy it on the internet and it's shipped right to my house. Me, myself, I don't have a problem if they, at the bottom of the invoice, total due, I pay it. And I don't have a problem if they have sales tax on there. I'm happy to pay it. I'm not having to drive 40, 80, 120 miles to buy this. So I'm happy to pay the city sales tax. But the municipalities has been struggling also through this oil crisis that we've had. They've been struggling. I was visiting with Mayor Peterson when the virus went through Seaboard. I could not believe what that virus, what was it, a 3-month period? What it cost the city of Guyman, just for that little hole in the production. So these municipalities will really benefit from this internet sales tax. I'm up to here with state issues. I've got transgender bathrooms here. I'll just kind of take questions, but I was home on a Friday. K101 had called me for a statement on the testing bill that we had done. And then he mentioned, "Oh, do you want to comment on what Obama did?" And I said, I have no idea what Obama did today. I'm totally immersed in the state issues. This was mid-session or right towards the end of session. I hadn't even read what the federal government was doing. I was totally immersed into state issues at this time. So if you have some questions, I'll do my best. Wind. This year, as last year, this year it was worse. There is a major battle in Oklahoma against wind. It seemed like this session, every week, we had an anti-wind bill. Whether it was to take their zero emission tax credits away, and by the way, the zero emission tax credit sunsets in 2020. So the wind companies only have 4 years left of this tax credit. Last year, they gave up their ad valorem exemption credit. They came to the table, gave 2 of them up. They made the deal, we will give these up willingly and won't fight you if, that's just bothering me, sorry. If you leave our zero emission tax credits alone. Leadership said, yes, we'll do that. We will not touch your zero emission tax credit. Seemed like day one of session, they were going after those zero emission tax credit. I went to leadership, I talked to them, I said, look, I know we're facing an uphill battle this year, but we gave wind companies our word. There's 4 years left till they sunset out. And I don't know about you, but my word is worth something. And if I give somebody my word, I'm going to make sure it happens. And to basically 4 months after we gave them our word, we're going back taking shots at them is not right. But it seemed like this session, every week on the House side, these bills was originating in the Senate. We were killing them in the House. Every week we'd kill an anti-wind bill. And they would find another title to a bill, strip the language, and stick anti-wind language in the bill and send it to us. And that it was horrible. During the budget process last week, 2 weeks ago, they ran basically the same bill twice through a budget committee that would take the zero emission. One day they ran it. It went down, it died. They fired it up again and ran it again basically the next day, trying to go after them again. And it died again, thankfully, because these wind companies are investing hundreds of millions of dollars in Oklahoma, and they get their financing based on their tax credits. I mean, that's part of their financing deal. That's part of their cash flow. When they go to their banks to borrow money for a wind project, they say, well, you know, the state's also giving them this, this, and this, and it's like knocking a leg out from underneath them if we take that away, because they thought the deal was made. They have financial obligations to their bankers, and we're knocking a leg out from underneath them. But I'm happy to say we were able to kill every anti-wind bill that came across. But it was a fight all year long, and I expect the fight will continue next year. Harold Hamm, the CEO of Continental, is the man that's pushing this, and he was in an interview about mid-session. The reporter asked him, so if you get the wind zero emission tax credit, are you going to be happy and kind of leave them alone? And he said, no. He goes, I will not be happy until every windmill is tore down and shipped out of the state of Oklahoma. So that's what we're fighting. And I don't know whether you know, but Harold Hamm has just a little bit of money. He just recently got a divorce, and the check that he wrote his ex-wife, personal check, was for $1 billion. So he has a little bit of money to put up to fight the wind companies. So that's one thing that we're up against, and I'm sure they're gonna come at wind again next year. State questions. We have 2 state questions. Well, we're going to have several, but I think 2 that's important for us. The first one is state question 777. That is the right to farm. Everywhere I'm at, I try to talk about it, mention it, so you've probably already heard my spiel, but I'm going to give it to you again. I think we're good out here in getting the votes to pass this state question, but if you guys know people, have relatives, friends in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, call them, tell them to vote for it, tell them to get their friends to vote for it. What this does is it puts your right to farm in our Constitution. Now we have right now today, we have the right to farm, and it's in legislation, we've got it. But one thing that we do in the legislature every day is we repeal and we amend law. And for the most part, it's pretty easy to do. But if it's in the Constitution, it makes it a little harder to change and amend and mess with. And what this state question 777, it puts the right to farm in the Constitution. The battles we have in Oklahoma City is urban versus rural. We have a strong rural caucus at the Capitol right now today. But rural Oklahoma is moving to town. We are losing population. And every time we have a census and we have to redistrict, we will lose rural legislators because we're having to reach into these urban areas to grab the population for our district. I have to represent 37,000 people. And when there's not 37,000 people in this district after a census, we'll have to redistrict and we'll have to grab 37,000 people, or enough to make 37,000 people. 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when we don't have a strong rural caucus, you could have someone go up and convince these urban guys, because we have a disconnect today. I think we're a generation away from when everyone had a uncle or a granddad or someone that had a ranch or a farm, and they'd spent some time on it and they understood it. They were connected to agriculture in some way. I think we're a generation away from that right now. There's some people that don't even know where milk comes from. You know, when I was a kid, I had cousins that lived in town, and I'd give them a hard time that chocolate milk came from a brown cow. But that was a joke. Today, it's scary, but there's people that doesn't understand where their food comes from. And this state question 777 protects our right to farm, and it protects our industry. And I've been making a lot of phone calls in this campaign, and I visited with the lady, and she had said, well, this just helps corporate agriculture. I believe it helps the small rancher and farmer much more than corporate. Corporate farms can deal with regulations. They may not like it, but they can continue to operate and go on down the road. Me, if the state put a regulation on me, it would, I probably couldn't absorb it. If they changed how I do things on my ranch, I may not be able to absorb it. I may not be able to do that, and it could shut me down, and I'm small. I think state question 777 protects the small farmer a lot more than it protects the corporate guys. Then we have state question 779, and that is the 1% sales tax to give teachers pay raises, and some of that money goes to higher ed, some goes to grants, some goes to early childhood development. I don't like 779. First of all, it's been sold as a 1-cent sales tax. It's not, it's 1% sales tax. So it's not going to cost you a penny. It's going to cost you more than a penny. I think in this district, that sales tax has the potential of driving people across the state line. I think it would hurt us because we live so close to Kansas and Texas. We could lose business over this sales tax. And then President Boring was the one that's pushing this, and he sold this saying, you know, we're going to give teachers pay raises. But in all his sales pitches, he did not mention that higher ed is getting $125 million a year off of this. Higher ed is getting a lot of money today. But anyway, I'll move on. Another thing that came up this year, our governor, in her wisdom, thought it would be smart to tax the sale of horses. Mike, 10% on sale of horses. The Rural Caucus got together. We sent her a very in-depth letter saying that this would not be a good thing. Actually, it would probably shut down the horse business in Oklahoma. You would not sell another horse in Oklahoma. We have the Heritage Sale in Oklahoma City that sells high-dollar horses. Shawnee has a big horse sale. I don't know about you guys, Mike. Do you load your horses up in a trailer? Pretty easy, load up in the trailer and haul them out of state to sell them. We were able to convince her it wasn't a good thing for the sale of horses, but when we asked her why would you want to put a sales tax on horses, she said, well, because they're luxury items. Yeah, I did the same thing, Mike. My horses that I have, I've got 5 of them. I don't look at them as a luxury item. They're tools. I use them every day. I don't own a 4-wheeler. I do all my work on horseback. They're a tool. They're no different than a tractor or a combine. But she wanted to put taxes on them, and we were able to stop that. That has gotten to the end of my list, so I'll take questions.
And if you have a question, if we could just go ahead and speak in the microphone, we can pick it up on the audio.
Also, one other thing, if Bryce doesn't show up, give me some time and I'll go back and talk about the budget more. But we'll take questions for a while, and if we're pushing the end, I'll go back into more in detail on the budget.
Because I think we're about 15 minutes too late right now.
Okay.
So
Let's take some questions.
Okay. Questions? Carolyn?
I won't be very shy. Is it okay
Well, it all
Okay.
depends. What's your question?
I don't know. Is this thing turned on? Oh, it is turned on. It doesn't feel like it is. If you could talk a little bit about the idea that was thrown out on the taxing of certain services that are consistent with our contiguous states, because in Oklahoma, we are the only state where cities and towns do not receive ad valorem for general operations. So that makes our municipalities overly dependent on that voter-approved local sales tax to fund all their general operations, police, fire, the libraries, the parks, the roads, and everything. So for the first time in the many years that I've been doing this, there was discussion about taxing certain services. If I take my car to the shop and they have to put a part on it, they're going to tax me for that part, but they don't tax me for the services. Just give me one bill. I mean, it's not like I'm not going to go pick my car up because I'm paying an extra $5, but it does help the community. So what was the behind-the-scenes dialogue on all of that issue and why that failed to advance?
Thank you for that question. I think at that point in our budget process, I know at the first of the session we were looking very serious at this, and as Republicans, we made some tough votes, and I think as we filled the budget, there were several of our section of the House that could not vote for another tax increase. And I think that's probably why that went down, because it looked like it was another tax increase. And I think that for just the simple, easy answer, that's why it didn't go anywhere. I know Dennis Johnson pushed that really hard, and he did tremendous work and research on the sales and the services on states that surround us and what they charge service tax on that we don't. And there's a lot. There is a lot of services that New Mexico, Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, Missouri charges that we don't. But it just, I think that the consensus on the House is we're not going to raise any more taxes than we have to, if that answers your question.
Any more questions for Representative Murdoch?
Yeah, go ahead. If there's no questions, I need to get into it, so go ahead.
Here's my question on the budget is looking over it. I understand that with a $1.3 billion hole, just about everything's going to take a cut. But the one thing I noticed was the Legislative Service Bureau got like a $9 million increase. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us, A, why it got an increase, and B, why that increase was so substantial.
Okay, yes, I can. And I actually got the numbers here. I better have the numbers here. I put it. So, for years, when the House was under Democratic control, they had a revolving account for their operations of the House and the Senate. And this revolving account was huge. When the Republicans took over, we started cutting what we were getting, what we were doing. And we were just living off of that revolving account. We're close to that revolving account. It's totally depleted. So what we did, we moved the House and Senate operations over to the LSB, the Legislative, Service Bureau. And so we just transferred it over to there, and then the Senate transferred out of their revolving fund $1.5 million, and that's the increase that you saw, and that's why you can't believe everything you see on Facebook, but some of the stuff come on Facebook that we increased our sales 25%. And that was the Senate stuck $1.5 million out of their revolving fund into that account to fund it because what we were using was used up. I mean, and so to give you some numbers, so this year, so we appropriated 2016 budget last year in 15. We appropriated $34,003,000 for the running of the House and Senate. This year we appropriated $35,725,000. The difference about $1,700,000. The revolving fund was $1.5 million. The difference wound up about $222,000. But we did not get any raises, and I can tell you our LAs didn't get a raise. We're stripped to the bone. This is one thing I don't like. Senior members get full-time LAs. Freshmen have to share an LA and they're part-time. They work Monday through Thursday and then they're done. The thing I don't like about this is because I'm a freshman, I get that part-time LA. I represent you. That LA works for you. So by doing that, they're saying that a senior member, his constituents, is worth a full-time LA. You guys are only worth a part-time LA, and I think we get, and not just we, I mean, I'll move up into leadership and have a full-time LA, but across the board, that district that sends the freshmen up there as their representative, their people are really getting shorted on the services they get from the Capitol. Now, we've done a real good job. I don't know about other representatives. The LA that steps in on Fridays and during the summer that takes care of me is a superstar. Actually, if I could steal her away from her regular representative that she represents or that she works for, I would in a heartbeat. Actually, I think she's looking for another job. And she wanted me to sign a reference letter, and I said, I'm not signing your reference letter. I don't want you going anywhere. She's a superstar. And I think we have handled that as well as we could, but we are trying to cut what we do there. We've cut our LAs back. We can't get a raise. We can't go in there and vote ourselves a raise. Our raises are determined by the Legislative Compensation Board, and the legislature has not had a raise since 1998. And in '98 they were making $32,000, and they went up to $38,000. I know I got some emails saying, "Yeah, I know you guys are just voting yourselves raises while you're cutting everybody." No, we can't vote ourselves a raise. And what you're asking is, we moved one section over to the LSB.
Transferred some of what was under the budget for the House and Senate to the budget for the LSB just to streamline out.
Right. And it should make it also more transparent on what we're spending up there. And I'd be happy to give you this.
I might steal it from you.
Okay. So.
I mean, like I said, for me, it was just that was kind of glaring when you sit there and notice everything's minus.
Yep.
Plus 100 and some odd %, and I'm going, whoa, that's like crazy.
Right,
So,
and we had a caucus meeting right after that came out, and I was the same way. I said, what happened? Why did we do this? Because, I'm still a freshman, so I'm not in leadership and making those decisions on what they're doing. And I'm like, why did we just do this? Because I'm going to get beat up at home over this. And they explained it. And so the Speaker of the House and the Pro Tem of the Senate decided to do this. They're termed out. They are leaving. And what the Speaker said, if we were gonna pad something, we'd pad it while we're here, not as we're going out the door. But that's what that is.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Looks like the floor is quiet today.
Floor's quiet. So budget. I was kind of dependent on Bryce to do this. You guys are in trouble because I left my paperwork on the budget in my hotel room, so you're just going to have to depend on my memory.
Well, I can tell you, and I want to thank you, Representative Murdoch, for being so accessible to us, either by email or telephone. I do appreciate that. When I do need you, you're there. If you're not, about 15, 20 minutes later, you've shot an email back or a text. So remember, you can contact him by email at casey.murdoch@okhouse.gov. Or call his legal or his legislative assistant, and she'll shoot him a message. So I thank you for that.
Yeah.
And all your work down there, we appreciate it.
Well, I feel like I work for you guys, and when the boss calls, you probably better get back to him pretty quick.
And with that, we'll just call it a morning. We thank Seaboard Farms for providing us breakfast this morning. And again, if you have questions for Representative Murdoch, don't hesitate to call him. He worked for us.
And when I ran last time, I sold the benefits of living in Felt is I have to drive all the way through the district, so it's not a problem for me to stop either. And I have done that. I've stopped in Adams, and I've stopped in Optimal to visit with people on my way to Oklahoma City or on my way home. Stopped at Midway Church coming home one day and visited with a gentleman. So I do not have a problem stopping along the way to visit if you have a problem.
And with that, have a great week.